Okay, so everyone get ready because uh, Meta just kind of threw a wrench into things
hmm
in the AI world
Yeah, it's a big
with
one.
this whole Llama 4 thing. It's a family of open source AI models.
And they're open source, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, and it's not just like, oh, they're a little bit better at writing or something. They're talking about AI that can actually see images,
Yeah.
like right from the start.
Yeah, natively multimodal.
And it's not just bolting on like, oh, here's an image now, tell me about it. It's like built in.
Right from the beginning, early fusion, they call it.
And they're using this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a brain with a team of
It's a
experts.
mixture of experts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
And then on top of all of that, the memory on these things is just like bonkers.
Yeah, millions of tokens.
Yeah. So how is all of this going to like change how we use technology even just in like the next year or two?
Well, that's what we're going to try to figure out today.
Yeah, that's what this whole deep dive is about.
This isn't just another one of those like, oh, look at this shiny new AI. This is something that I think has the potential to really like shift things in a meaningful way. And we've been reading a lot about this,
Yeah.
trying to get a handle on it.
So we've looked at Meta's own blog posts, of course, because they're the ones who created this.
Right, straight from the source.
But then we've also looked at a bunch of analyses and opinions and news articles. Like we've got stuff from NDTV, we've got Mint.
The Cloudflare blog actually has a really interesting perspective on this.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are hosting it, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack here, and our mission is to kind of cut through the technical jargon
Right, because there's a lot of it.
and just get to the, like, what does this actually mean, you know?
The juicy stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So let's just dive right in. This Llama 4 thing, it's not just one thing, it's a whole family of models.
It is, yeah, and that's one of the interesting things about it. They've released different models sort of targeted at different things.
So it's not just like, here's the one AI to rule them all.
Well, right. It's more like a set of tools.
Okay, so what are the different like members of this AI family?
So the main ones are Llama 4 Scout, Llama 4 Maverick,
Okay.
and then they've given us a preview of two that are still in development, Llama 4 Behemoth and Llama 4 Reasoning.
The humans, that sounds scary.
It does.
Okay, so let's start with Scout.
Okay.
What's Scout's deal? What's its main thing?
Well, Scout's big claim to fame is its massive context window, 10 million tokens.
10 million tokens.
Okay.
For the people out there who don't know what a token is, I mean, I kind of get it, but
Yeah, it's basically a chunk of text.
all right, but how big is that?
So 10 million tokens is roughly equivalent to about 15,000 pages of text
Oh, wow.
that this model can like hold in its mind at once and make connections between.
That's insane. Like, I can't even remember what I had for breakfast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so imagine being able to analyze a research paper
Or a whole bunch of research papers.
or a whole bunch of research papers and be able to make connections between them or understand the entire code base of a complex piece of software.
Ah,
That's the kind of scale that we're talking about here.
that's really something. And it can actually do that. It's not just theoretical. It can actually process that much information.
They claim it can.
Okay, all right, it's 15,000 pages. It's like having a superpowered research assistant or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not just about the size of the context window.
Right.
It also has a huge number of parameters, 109 billion,
Which is a lot.
which is a lot.
Yeah.
But the really clever bit is that they're using this mixture of experts thing we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so break that down for me because I still don't really get it.
Okay, so imagine instead of having one person who's supposed to be good at everything,
Right.
you have a team of specialists,
Yeah.
right? So you have one person who's a brilliant coder, another person who's a fantastic writer, and someone else who's great at understanding images.
Okay, yeah.
So in the mixture of experts architecture,
hmm
only the relevant experts get activated for a given task.
So it's like calling in the right person for the job.
Exactly. Yeah. So instead of having all 109 billion parameters active all the time, which would be incredibly computationally expensive
And slow.
and slow, yeah, it only uses the ones that are actually needed for that particular task.
So it's kind of like a brain with a bunch of different specialized areas.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so Scout is using that.
It is. Yeah. It's got 16 experts.
16 experts. Wow.
And only about 17 billion of those parameters are active at any given time.
Oh, so it's still a lot, but it's not all 109 billion.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like a more efficient use of its brain power.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And they're already benchmarking this thing against other models, right?
They are. Yeah. And they're claiming some pretty impressive results.
Like what?
So they're saying that it's performing really well against things like Gemma 3, Gemini 2.0, Flashlight Mistral 3.1.
And these are all like the big names in AI right now?
These are all the current state of the art in a lot of these tasks.
So for it to already be competitive with those is pretty significant.
It is. Yeah, especially for an open source model.
Okay, so that's Scout. 15,000 pages, mixture of experts, 16 expert brains all working together.
And available for developers to play with.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
On Cloudflare Workers AI.
If you're a coder out there, you can actually get your hands on this thing.
You can download it and start experimenting with it.
Wow, that's really cool. Okay, so that's Scout. Now, what about Maverick? What's Maverick all about?
So Maverick is kind of the general purpose workhorse of the Llama 4 family.
Okay.
So this is the one that they envision being used for things like, general assistant type tasks, chatting.
Okay, so like the more everyday kind of AI stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it also has 17 billion active parameters, but its total parameter count is much larger. It's 400 billion.
200 billion. Wow, okay.
And it's got a bigger team of experts as well. It's got 128.
So it's like a bigger brain overall.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay. And what else is special about Maverick?
Well, one of the really exciting things about Maverick is that it's natively multimodal.
Yeah, okay, you're going to have to explain that one to me again.
So multimodal basically means that it can understand different types of input.
Right.
In this case, it means that it can understand both text and images.
So it can actually see.
It can actually see, yeah.
Oh.
And it can understand the relationship between the text and the images.
Okay, so it's not just like, here's a picture now, describe it. It's like, it can actually understand the meaning of the image in relation to the text.
Exactly, yeah. And that opens up a whole bunch of possibilities.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, it could make it much better at things like analyzing visual content.
Okay.
So you could imagine using it to analyze social media posts that have both text and images.
Right.
Or it could be used to help with creative writing that involves both text and images.
Wow.
So you could imagine giving it a prompt, like write me a children's story about a talking cat.
And it could come up with the pictures too.
And it could come up with the pictures too.
Oh, that's really cool. Okay, so it can see, it can understand images, and what else?
Well, Meta's also claiming that it's performing really well on a bunch of different benchmarks.
Okay.
So they're saying it's outperforming GPT-4o.
Okay.
And Gemini 2.0 Flash on a variety of tasks, including code generation, reasoning, multilingual understanding, image analysis, and handling long contexts.
So all that stuff we were talking about before, like being able to understand 15,000 pages.
Yeah, this one's not quite as good at that, but it's still pretty good at it.
Okay.
And they're also saying that it's rivaling DeepSeek v3.1 in coding and logic.
Wow.
Which is another very large, very impressive language model.
Okay, so Maverick is kind of like the all-rounder.
Yeah, you could say that.
It can do a lot of different things well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying it's better than some of the best models out there.
On at least some tasks.
Okay, and where does it stand, like in the real world? Is there any way to kind of compare it to other AIs that are actually being used?
Well, it's currently ranked pretty highly on the Hugging Face chatbot arena,
Okay.
which is basically like a leaderboard for chatbots.
So people can go on there and like chat with it and other AIs.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and it's been performing very well.
Okay, cool. So Maverick is definitely one to watch.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, now we've got Scout, we've got Maverick, and then there's this behemoth thing looming in the background.
Yeah, this is the one that's still in development.
Right.
But it's kind of a glimpse into the future of very large AI models.
So how big is this thing?
It's nearly 2 trillion parameters.
2 trillion.
With 288 billion active.
Okay, so that's even bigger than Maverick's 400 billion.
Much bigger, yeah.
And what are they planning on doing with this thing? Is it just going to like take over the world?
Well, Meta envisions it as one of their most intelligent models yet.
Okay.
They're even saying that it could be used as a teacher for other models.
Okay.
So they could use it to train smaller AI models to be more effective.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like AI teaching AI.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And are they making any claims about its performance yet?
They are. Yeah, they're saying that it's already outperforming things like GPT 4.5, Claude Sonnet 3.7, and Gemini 2.0 Pro on STEM benchmarks.
STEM. So science, technology, engineering, math.
Exactly.
So it's like a super-powered brain for those kinds of tasks.
You could say that.
Wow. Okay, so Behemoth is still in the oven?
Yeah, it's still being trained.
But it's already showing a lot of promise.
It is, yeah.
Okay. And then the last one that we know about is Llama 4 reasoning.
Yeah.
And that one sounds like it's all about thinking.
Yeah, that's the one that's specifically designed for like tackling complex problems and in-depth analysis.
Okay, so we don't know much about that one yet.
Not really, no. They haven't released a lot of details.
Okay, but it's interesting that they're even focusing on that, because I feel like a lot of the focus with AI has been on, like, writing and image generation and things like that.
Yeah, but reasoning is really important if you want to create AI that can actually solve problems.
Right.
And not just generate text or images.
Okay, so we've got Scout, we've got Maverick, we've got Behemoth looming in the background, and then we've got this mysterious reasoning model.
All right.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more about this mixture of experts thing, because I feel like that's one of the most important aspects of Llama 4.
It is, yeah. It's a really significant innovation.
Okay, so can you give us like a real-world analogy to help us understand how it works?
Sure. So imagine you're trying to build a house.
Okay.
You wouldn't just hire one person to do everything.
Right. You'd have different specialists?
Exactly. You'd have an architect to design the house. You'd have a builder to construct it. You'd have an electrician to do the wiring. You'd have a plumber to do the plumbing.
Right.
So the mixture of experts architecture is kind of like that.
Okay.
It's like having a team of specialized AI brains.
Okay.
And then there's this thing called a router, which is kind of like the foreman on a construction site.
Okay.
And the router's job is to figure out which expert is best suited for a particular task.
Okay, so if you need some wiring done, you call in the electrician. If you need some plumbing done, you call in the plumber.
Exactly.
Okay, and so that makes the whole process more efficient.
Much more efficient, yeah, because you're not wasting time and resources on experts who aren't needed for that particular task.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And so this is being used in all of the Llama 4 models.
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. Now, what about this native multimodality thing? We talked about it a little bit with Maverick, but can you explain that in more detail?
Sure. So native multimodality basically means that the AI can understand different modes of input from the very beginning.
Okay.
So in this case, it means that it can understand both text and images, and it can understand the relationship between them.
Okay.
And the key here is that it's built in from the ground up.
Okay.
So it's not like they just took a language model and then slapped on an image recognition module.
Right.
They actually trained the model on both text and images simultaneously.
Okay, so it's like it's learning to see and read at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. And that allows it to develop a much deeper understanding of the relationship between the two.
Okay, so how does that actually work in practice?
So they're using this technique called early fusion.
Okay.
Which basically means that the text and image information is combined right from the start of the processing pipeline.
Okay.
So instead of processing the text and images separately and then trying to merge them later,
Right.
they're actually merged right from the beginning.
Okay. And that makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference, yeah, because it allows the model to learn the relationship between the text and images in a much more nuanced way.
Okay, and so that's what allows Maverick to do things like understand the meaning of an image in relation to a caption.
Exactly. Yeah. And it also means that it can generate text that's more relevant to the images it's seen.
Okay, so it's like it's actually thinking about the images.
Exactly.
Not just looking at them.
Right.
Okay, cool. So we've got mixture of experts, we've got native multimodality. These are some pretty big advancements in AI technology.
Yes, they are, yeah.
But what do they actually mean for us? Like, how are these things going to impact our lives?
Well, I think that's the big question.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say for sure, but I think we can start to get a sense of it by thinking about some specific examples.
Okay.
So let's start with Llama 4 Scout.
Right.
And its massive 10 million token context window.
15,000 pages.
15,000 pages, yeah. So imagine you're a researcher.
Okay.
And you're trying to stay up to date on the latest research in your field.
Right.
That's a lot of papers to read.
It is, yeah, and it's only getting worse.
It is, yeah. So imagine if you had an AI that could read all of those papers for you.
And actually understand them.
And actually understand them and make connections between them that you might not have even thought of.
That would be amazing.
It would, yeah. And that's the kind of thing that Llama 4 Scout could potentially do.
Wow.
It could also be really useful for things like, legal research or financial analysis.
Any kind of job where you have to process a lot of information.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so that's Scout. Now, what about Maverick?
So Maverick, I think, is going to have a huge impact on the way we interact with technology on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So, we already have things like Siri and Alexa.
Right.
But imagine if those assistants were much more capable.
Huh?
Imagine if they could actually understand what you're saying and respond in a more natural way.
Okay.
Imagine if they could understand the context of your requests and even anticipate your needs.
That would be pretty cool.
It would, yeah. And that's the kind of thing that Maverick could potentially enable.
Wow.
And because it's multimodal, it could also interact with us in a much richer way.
Okay.
So you can imagine having an assistant that can not only understand your voice commands, but also understand the visual context of your environment.
Okay.
So it could be like, you're in the kitchen and you say, hey, I need to make dinner.
Right.
And your assistant could look around the kitchen, see what ingredients you have, and then suggest some recipes.
Wow.
Or you could be working on a project and you say, hey, I need some inspiration. And your assistant could show you some relevant images or videos.
That would be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Maverick could really change the way we interact with technology.
I think so, yeah.
Now, what about Behemoth?
Mm.
What kind of impact could that have?
Well, Behemoth is still in development, so it's hard to say for sure.
Right.
But I think it has the potential to really push the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
Okay.
So they're already claiming that it's outperforming some of the best models out there on STEM tasks.
Right.
So you can imagine it being used to accelerate scientific discovery, develop new technologies, and solve complex engineering problems.
Wow.
And because it can be used as a teacher for other models, it could also help to improve the capabilities of AI across the board.
So it could be like the ultimate AI tutor.
Exactly.
Okay, so Behemoth is one to watch.
Definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential benefits of Llama 4.
Right.
But what about the potential risks?
Well, like with any powerful technology, there are always potential risks.
Right.
And AI is no exception.
So what are some of the things we should be thinking about?
Well, one concern is that AI could be used to create deepfakes or other forms of misinformation
Right.
that could be used to manipulate people or sow discord.
Yeah, that's already a problem even without AI.
It is, yeah, and AI could make it much worse.
Okay, what else?
Another concern is that AI could be used to automate jobs,
Right.
which could lead to widespread unemployment.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people are worried about.
It is, yeah, and it's a valid concern.
Okay, and what about bias? Like, could Llama 4 be biased?
Well, any AI model is only as good as the data it's trained on.
Right.
So if the data is biased, the model will be biased too.
Okay, and is there any way to prevent that?
Well, there are a lot of people working on ways to mitigate bias in AI,
Okay.
but it's a complex problem and there's no easy solution.
So we need to be aware of the potential for bias and be critical of the outputs of these models.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't just blindly trust what AI tells us.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got some potential benefits. We've got some potential risks. Now, what about the bigger picture? Like, how is Llama 4 going to change the world?
Well, I think it has the potential to be really transformative.
Okay.
So first of all, the fact that it's open source is huge.
Right, because that means anyone can use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just going to be big companies like Google and Microsoft who have access to this technology.
Right.
It's going to be available to everyone.
So that could really level the playing field.
It could, yeah. And
Yeah.
it could lead to a lot of innovation.
Okay. Oh,
Well, I think it also has the potential to change the way we think about AI.
okay.
So right now, a lot of people think of AI as this kind of magical black box.
Right.
But Llama 4 is different because it's open source.
Right.
So anyone can look under the hood and see how it works.
So that could make people more comfortable with AI.
It could, yeah. And it could also help to demystify it.
Okay, so it's like open sourcing AI could make it more accessible,
Yeah,
more understandable, and more trustworthy.
exactly.
Okay, so now it's time for our bold prediction.
Okay.
Based on everything we've talked about,
Uh-huh.
what do you think is going to be the biggest impact of Llama 4?
Well, I think Llama 4 is going to accelerate the adoption of AI in a really significant way.
Okay.
So we're already seeing AI being used in a lot of different industries.
Right.
But I think Llama 4 is going to make it much easier and more affordable for businesses of all sizes to start using AI.
Okay.
And that's going to lead to a whole wave of new AI-powered products and services.
So it's like AI is going to become more ubiquitous.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so that's your bold prediction.
It is, yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's a good place to wrap things up.
I think so, too.
So just to recap, Meta's Llama 4 is a family of open source AI models that are pushing the boundaries of what's possible with AI.
Right.
They're using some really innovative technology like mixture of experts and native multimodality.
Right.
And they have the potential to impact our lives in a lot of different ways. So we encourage you to learn more about Llama 4 and think about how it might affect your life.
Yeah, and keep a critical eye on the development of AI in general.
Right, because it's a powerful technology and it's important to use it responsibly.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Llama 4.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later. Bye.